two due to illness, and Christian Marcus just texted me that he's going to be cutting in a little bit close. He might be a little bit late, but he does expect to be here. So good afternoon. Jennifer, can we have a roll call, please?
Ruby?
Here.
Marcus? Rolla?
Here.
Hankins?
Here.
McGinnis?
Here.
Coons? Calorito? Powers?
Here.
I think we just have a quorum right now, and when Christian gets here, we should be well over that, but we have 5 of the 8 members. Review and approval of the meeting minutes from April 5th. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Roloff. Is there a second? Support. Supported by Commissioner Rubin.
Top of page 2. It says, chairperson worked with the health officer to identify programs to be highlighted at the monthly, the board.
Okay, yep,
So I think it's just a,
yep, typo.
Just strike that the after monthly.
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it was good.
Okay.
And then the last page, bottom adjournment,
Mhm.
we don't have who it's supported by, and I'm not,
We didn't do a roll call, everybody just said yay, so I just.
but usually if you have a motion,
Mhm.
you should have who's the second.
I didn't, there was no second. It just, everybody said supported.
Okay,
I watched the minutes. No,
that's fine.
okay.
Okay. Any further
That's the
correction?
chairman's fault then.
Blame it on the chairman. Take a number. Any further discussion on the minutes of April 5th? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, Jeff?
Rolla?
Yes.
Hankins?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yep.
Calorito? Motion second. Powers?
Yes.
Rubin?
Yes.
Review and approval of the special meeting minutes from April 26th, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of April 26th.
Moved by Mr. Rubin,
I'll second that.
seconded by Ms. Powers. Any discussion? I know, Jen, on the open session resumed at 5:15, chaired by Commissioner misspelled there. Correct that.
Yes, got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anything further? Hearing no further discussion, can we have a roll call, Jim?
McGinnis?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Rubin?
Yes.
Rolla?
Yes.
Hankins?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Review and approval of the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Mr. McKinnon, supported by Mr. Rubin. Any further discussion? Any changes? Hearing none. Jen, can you have a roll?
Rubin?
Yes.
Rolla?
Yes.
Hankins?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Okay. Next, we have public comment, item number 6. I'm going to read the existing rules. There will be a sign-up sheet for those who wish to speak during public comment. A person who wishes to speak during public comment will first obtain a recognition by the chairperson before speaking. Person will stand at the podium so that the microphone located there will be able to amplify the person's voice. I don't believe we have a podium, so if you would approach the table and speak loud and clear, we'd appreciate it. There's Mr. Marcus.
There's nobody signed up for public comment.
Okay, thank you. The person addresses the chairperson on behalf of the entire board. Public comment is not to be addressed to individual commissioners or staff. The person will first state their first and last name, the spelling of the name if necessary. There's a 3-minute time limit for each speaker. There will be someone keeping time. After you state your name and spelling, they will start the timer. Once you hear the ding, please be respectful and end your comment. A speaker may speak only once at public comment. There's no provision for another audience member to donate their 3-minute time to a speaker. A speaker will be out of order if the speaker disrupts the meeting, fails to be germane, by speaking longer than the allotted time, by speaking vulgarities, or by making a personal attack on a board member or health department employee that is unrelated to the performance of that person's duties. If a speaker is called out of order, that speaker will not be able to speak again at the same meeting. If the speaker continues to disrupt the meeting or is disorderly, the chairperson may request the removal of the speaker by law enforcement. Members of the public shall refrain from interrupting the designated speaker. Chairperson may interrupt the speaker at any time to enforce the rules. Members of the public are not to approach the board members or distribute any materials during the meeting. Members of the public shall not engage in disruptive, discourteous, belligerent, impertinent, threatening, disparaging, or otherwise uncivil behavior. Members of the public who refuse to conform with the rules despite being cautioned to do so by the chairperson may be asked to leave the meeting and/or will result in a suspension of proceedings and adjournment. Chairperson will have the discretion to permit members of the public to speak at times other than the times reserved for public comment. There's no one on the list to speak of. Are there any members of the general public that wish to address the board? We have a lot of notes. So, all right, thank you. We will move on. Staff reports. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Item number 7, revised rules for public comment. The Program and Evaluation Committee has met again and has, make sure I've got the right. There's a 10-item set of rules here that have been proposed by the Program and Evaluation Committee. They're very similar to the 12 that I just read. They are reworked a little bit, and there are some changes. So first, we'll have discussion, but I need to have a motion and support of these proposed rules before we can have discussion and a vote.
I'll make a motion to adopt these rules in place of the other rules that we've had.
Moved by Commissioner Rubin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Marcus. Discussion. Mr. McInnes. Charlie and I have communicated some over this, and I know that you want to speak. If other members of the board want to address, that's fine too. But go ahead, Charlie.
Thank you. The first question is, what exactly is this document?
This document, the one that is provided in your packet, has 10 rules, and it is a proposed set of rules for public comment for this board to consider.
The reason I said that is the word rules only appears at the very bottom. And the first paragraph uses the phrase, the following information is provided, which is what the old one said, but I don't know how it can be considered rules if it's called information.
I want to make sure that that I've got the same document in front of me that you have, Charlie. The one that I have starts out at the beginning, the availability of public comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then there are 10.
Right, but it says public comments are welcome and are important to the board. To that end, the following information is provided. So if it's rules, why do we call it information? It should be called rules.
Okay.
Now,
You want to amend that to the following?
I've only got 13 more questions.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
Let's make some notes on the way.
Okay.
To that end, the following information is
Yeah, it should be
provided.
the following, the rules
Rules are provided?
are implemented or applied or enforced or something like that.
Okay.
Um,
Is there any, on that point, is there any discussion by the board? Anybody have any issues?
Information and rules, I like that.
Okay,
Okay, now, as defined in this document, what is the role of the chairperson in public comment? Is defined in this document. And let me give you a hint.
go ahead.
The previous document gave the chairperson very specific duties with regard to public comment, that is recognition of a speaker, et cetera, and that's been removed. Right now, the very first rule is just speakers are encouraged to use the podium. Before beginning, a speaker should clearly state their name. There's no reference to being recognized by the board chair. Okay. So the question becomes, who does recognize speakers?
Go ahead.
I think that if you've been to very many meetings, the chairman runs the meeting, so the chairman recognizes speakers.
But why was it removed from the rules for public comment?
It says right in number 3, the chairperson may, so it's.
No, number 3 may implement a sign-up sheet. That's a whole different issue. But the old rules said the chairperson must recognize, and it was taken out. So the question becomes, why was that instruction removed? I mean, was there some harm?
I have an opinion on it.
Go ahead.
I believe it's purely to recognize whether or not a chair can pick and choose whether or not they want to hear from you or that person, this person. If you walk up to the podium, you have a right to speak. And within the rules that we give you, that is, if the way it was written before, it can be construed as, I don't like you, I'm not going to listen to what you have to say, you're not being recognized.
So
This is just an opinion. So that wording made it seem like a chairperson had the ability to say, I don't recognize you,
okay, so you have
even if
removed,
they're in order.
you have removed the duty of the chairperson to recognize the speaker.
I think everybody has a right to speak. Public have a right to speak.
Okay, but it's a
Within the
conscious,
rules of the time frames.
it is a conscious decision to remove the power of the chairperson to recognize a public speaker.
I wasn't part of the committee. I'm just giving my opinion.
Okay, that's fair. No, that's fair. It kind of leaves the chairperson with no job.
I don't agree with that.
Okay,
I agree with that.
what?
I agree with doing that. I don't agree with you either. The chairperson is in charge of the meeting.
All right,
That's all there is to it.
This is a policy for public comment. It was specifically removed from this policy, the responsibility of the chairperson to recognize a speaker.
Okay, now we're asking who took it out.
I just want to, I don't care who, I want to know why.
Well, I don't know, I wasn't part of the meeting either.
I don't think, I think as being part of the committee that did review these, I don't think that was a conscious decision to remove that specific language. I think it was an assumption that we all functioned under. I understand your point that if we're going to put rules down on paper, then let's make them very specific. I get that. Does anyone have any issue with adding a person who wishes to speak during public comment will first obtain recognition by the chairperson before speaking?
Yeah, I don't think it's needed. I mean, we aren't talking 5-year-olds here. If we want to put everything that's ever needed, then how come we don't have that you need shoes and shirt?
Are we, you must have missed the September meeting.
I was at the September meeting. I don't think you were there.
Correct. I was at the November with 65 speakers. So would it have been appropriate at the November meeting with 65 speakers for all of them individually to clamor to speak without any order applied by a chairperson?
No, I think any. Janine, are you recording this? I think as Commissioner Rubin spoke to, I think that there are certain perhaps unspoken rules that are assumed as part of any governmental meeting. That chairperson is in charge of the agenda and how that agenda flows along. And if 65 people were to stand up and start speaking, even in a whisper, 65 people, it would be very loud. And I would bang my gavel and probably have to re-glue it again.
But you wouldn't, are you asking him for permission to speak? Under this rule, you don't have to.
These rules are for public comment. These rules are not for the operation of this board. Mr. Marks.
I'm curious about your statement. If there was 65 people in here and they wanted to speak, you seem to believe that you don't have to let them all speak.
Where'd you get that?
You just said it. If 65 people showed up here and they all wanted to speak, they all speak.
Correct.
And we sit here and we want to listen to every one of them, but you made it sound just like you just said that if 65 people.
I don't know what you're
You
hearing.
don't-
I don't know what you're hearing.
Okay, as
But
long as
my
I'm
point-
not right, I just thought that's what you just said.
No, my
And
point
yes,
is.
65 people will speak if they chose to.
Of course they will. But how do we decide, how does somebody decide the order in which they speak? How does somebody maintain order?
Normally, Mr. Chairperson,
Yes,
normally we have a list if we have enough people who want to do public comment.
which
And
is
we
number
go by
3.
that list. If we don't have a list and there's just a small number of people who want to comment, they step up to the podium or wherever. Once they're finished, the next person steps up, and that's been, as far as I can remember, that's been the policy. That's how we did it.
Actually, they've been recognized before they step up to speak. Otherwise, they're all going to step up at once.
That's never happened.
There is on item number 3 here, it says the chairperson may implement a sign-up sheet for public comment at any time during the meeting if it becomes necessary. And I think that's been the case with
Well, then the-
staff members. Go
The
ahead.
question becomes, why would you implement a sign-up sheet during the meeting? Why don't you implement it before the meeting when you see there's
It
a
would
crowd?
it would be.
It says at any time.
Yeah, but why would there be any other time but at the beginning?
This isn't a recipe. This could be done in any order as the chairman sees. It's
No,
not.
this
you have
isn't
to do it
any,
in
this
order.
isn't any, this is a set of rules.
I know, but you're making it sound like in order of how we do things. If he sees 25 people up there, he might direct somebody to pass around a sign-up sheet. If he sees 2 people in the audience, he may not bother.
Correct, I
Yeah,
agree with that.
We've solved the problem.
I agree. Now, the question becomes, at anytime during a meeting, so apparently we can wait till the middle of the meeting, grind it to a halt, pass out a sign-up sheet, which is a little bit disorganized. And then there's some reference to a large public turnout. I'm not clear why the phrase large public turnout is needed, because it's not defined. Tell me what a large public turnout is.
How can we do that?
You can't.
If there are 20, is that a large public turnout? If
I don't
there are 40? And if we're there, we put a number in, then we talk, let 20 people talk and say, sorry, that's our number for the day.
No problem, but why do you refer to a large public turnout? How do you, why do you put an undefined phrase in there?
Well, okay, Charlie, to your point, under the previous rules that I read prior to the 12 that I believe were provided by you as a draft,
Mhm.
I asked the question in a previous meeting. Under number 11, members of the public shall not engage in disruptive, discourteous, belligerent, impertinent, threatening, disparaging, or otherwise uncivil behavior. And I asked who defines that.
Mhm.
I guess at that point, it's under my definition
You,
as the chairperson.
Right.
And after November, that could change to be a different chairperson. But my point is, we can nitpick everything. You mentioned that you have 13 other points to bring up. We can nitpick everything, but I think as Mr. Rubin stated, we are hopefully dealing with adults. The chairperson has the right to define what is disruptive behavior. And I can assure you that while I serve as chair, I won't allow that to take place.
I think disruptive behavior was removed from the policy.
Mm.
You got the courtesy and respectful,
Mhm.
and then, okay, just
And shall not be.
discourteous or disrespectful.
Right.
The reference disruptive, I think, is gone.
Well, okay. But yeah, that falls to the person who holds the gavel. Right now, it's me. Next year, it might be Julie, or it might be you.
The power won't be me. The power, thanks for the thought.
I'm saying it could be.
Right. Actually, the power of the chair to remove people has been removed.
I don't.
Yeah, try to find it.
Just because it doesn't specifically say it, doesn't mean that it's not true.
Why did you remove it?
Because I expect people to be adults, to be courteous and respectful.
And you were at the September meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Were they all respectful and courteous?
Who defines it?
Watch the video.
I didn't have to watch the video. I
But
was
the
there.
board chair was a different person at that time.
Correct, it was ambushed. Okay, there's no reference in these rules to removal. I'm sorry.
Commissioner,
How many years you been a commissioner?
Almost 10.
10 years. Do you have anything that you're talking about in your board rules that you're talking about?
Yeah, these are almost verbatim.
That to say that you have, that the chairperson can remove them based on disruption?
Yep.
You do.
Yeah, that's where these rules came from.
That's why you're so strong about it. Antrim County doesn't have those. We don't have those problems in our county, I guess.
I wouldn't say that.
Antrim County doesn't have them, Charlevoix County doesn't have them, and Otsego County doesn't have them.
Apparently you guys missed the September meeting.
No, I've been a commissioner for over 10 years, and we've never had
Actually-
to write that if you're a bad boy or bad girl, you're gonna be removed by the chair. I mean, it's just a given that if you're disruptive, I mean, there's,
But if it's a given that if you're disruptive, you'll be removed, why do you take it out of the policy? If it's a given, you're gonna
because
do it.
it becomes a construed, I don't, this is actually, I'm appalled that we're having that to have to make decisions on whether or not we decide that my high-level speaking voice is considered disruptive, my soft-spoken is considered disrespectful. I mean, where do you draw the line and what you consider disrespectful? Because I'm half deaf. I get louder as I talk. It's
Me too,
natural.
me too.
There's some people who talk so slothfully, you tell them to raise their voice, they don't. You might take it as them being disrespectful to you. So tell me where you draw the line at, what you want.
Fair point, okay.
Thank you.
Now, the next one is an interesting one. This is a trick question. Where's the podium?
there isn't one here tonight.
Actually, there isn't one at the other building either. It's a
Yes,
it's a
well-
lectern.
Okay.
Sorry you don't like it. I believe in using the correct words. Is that a problem for you?
Yeah, I think you're really getting a little bit out of hand over something.
Why is that wrong?
Mr.
I
Chairman.
just.
Why is that
it's
wrong?
Just,
All right,
I'm
gentlemen.
sorry.
All right,
Okay, it's a
gentlemen.
lectern, okay?
Ms. Roloff asked to be recognized. Go ahead.
Yes, I agree, Randy. It's like very disturbing to me that we can't all get together and get our problems worked out. Now, if we have, if this has been, I don't have this piece of paper within my stuff here, Charlie. And it's like, I understand where everybody's coming from, but I'm not sitting here a whole night debating something that we can throw back into the meeting and have enough meeting to clarify this. These people in here too, they would like to probably move along, say what they have to say. And let's send that back to the group that maybe you need to be one of the people that's in on the discussion. But I'm not gonna sit here all night and let you
Sounds good
guys
to me.
find amongst yourself.
Mr. Ruben.
I would like to move forward with the vote on this.
I'm not done.
I didn't ask if you were done. No matter how you have it, it's never gonna be perfect. We have discussed this for 25 hours in my committee. And you haven't showed up once.
Haven't been invited.
You are always invited.
I don't know when the meetings are.
You haven't asked.
Show me the invitation.
Okay, gentlemen.
All right, I'm
this is
not done.
pointless. Well,
We're
I
done.
understand you're not done, but I'm gonna call the question.
Thank you.
So I need a motion.
There's already a motion and a second.
There is a motion by Mr. Rubing. Who was the second?
Marcus.
Mr. Marcus. Okay, roll call vote, please, John.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
I'm gonna abstain because I really don't know if it.
Hankins,
Yes.
McGinnis,
No.
Powers.
Yes,
One, two, three, four, 4-1, one abstention, motion passes. Rules are adopted. Okay, staff reports. Item number 8.
All right.
Mr. Farrell.
Yes. Okay, so we'll receive a number of staff reports in the packets, and I'm going to talk about Public Health 3.0, which is, what you notice in the packet is the focus is on social determinants of health and their impact on overall health. And to understand Public Health 3.0, you have to talk about 1.0 and 2.0. So 1.0 is kind of what happened in the late part of the 19th century or the early part of the 20th century with just huge advancements in public health and in medicine. And, really it changed the game for society, with those developments. And then 2.0 is really, we talked about that, it's development capacity, development of the public health system and capacity with the governmental agencies that basically that's their, like ourselves, that's our focus on the community. So when you're talking about 3.0, it's really a modern approach to public health, which embraces strategies rooted in partnerships to improve health in the community. And this is done by leveraging data and resources to address social, environmental, and economic conditions to ensure all have equitable opportunity for health. This is built on the successes of the past, such as reduction in tobacco use, which has increased or decreased mortality in that area for like lung cancers and whatnot, also improved other facets of health. There's basically 5 recommendations that come out of Public Health 3.0, and that is that health departments should be the chief health strategist for the community, driving initiatives to meet community needs, and address upstream needs such as social determinants of health, which will be focused on and talked about by Susan Gillespie. So, health departments should engage community stakeholders through structured partnerships. We should follow public health accreditation board principles, which is a national standard for health departments. And even if it does take some effort for health departments to go through that, but even if you're just following the principles, it's a standard that's a national standard, which is good for health departments to be involved with. So there's also the investment in timely, reliable, and actionable data, which should be made available to the community and really guide, these metrics should guide and focus initiatives that the health department undertakes. Funding for public health should be enhanced and modified to support core infrastructure and community projects. And those are really the 5 broad recommendations coming out of this. And when you talk about this, to just kind of put it in context, when I was reading about public health 3.0's communities, for instance, in large cities, they may only be separated by a few miles, but they could have a 20-year difference in life expectancy because of different factors, economic factors, education, housing, things of that nature. So, I mean, that is, that's such a drastic difference here in Michigan, but there are differences in the communities throughout Northern Michigan, and really focusing on making sure that everybody has full access to health in our community is a really important
office of the health department. So that we'll talk a little bit more about some of the social determinants coming up. One thing moving on is I want to talk about personnel and finance, and just bring to the full board some updates about what we're looking at. And really, Holly Campbell's going to talk about, or can expand on this a little bit. It's in her board report, but the progress of the employee committee's compensation proposal for fiscal year 23 and 24 is something that in all of these actually is something that we'd like to bring to the personnel and finance committee and convene that committee. And this has been done in the past, not only for the employee compensation proposal, but also for talking about budget amendments and things of that nature that affect the finances of the health department. So really looking forward, an hour prior to the June meeting, June 7th, I believe it is, would be a good time to convene that personnel and finance committee. And then basically it's an opportunity for members of the board that are on that committee to look at in a more granular level some of these things that were being, offered to the full board. So another item that we'd like to bring to that committee would be the request for a proposal to a one-year extension of the engagement with Dennis Gartland and Yeargarth for the fiscal year 22 financial audit. And the reason that was proposed by them that they'd be willing to extend our agreement for 1 year, even though I think we're at the period where we're supposed to put it out for an RFP to look at those proposals. But given the fact that we don't have a chief financial officer, we just thought it would be a good idea to take them up on that extension, or at least get approval to look at what that would be. Tell us what that would mean to do that 1 year extension, what it would cost, and look at that as an option. Another thing would be,
Before you go on there, Dan, does anybody have any board members have any questions for Dan up to this point?
Mine's more so that the time and date is rough for me to get here earlier than it is.
Okay.
So hopefully we can work out a better time and date.
yeah, that doesn't have to be, it was just an idea, and I think that's the way that's been done in the past, is just like an hour before the board meeting, since you're still, everybody's coming here. If that doesn't work, certainly.
Christian, you said that you could not come before 4:30.
It's hard for me to get here at 4:30.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
oh, yeah, right, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. Understandable.
When do we do it? Go ahead and say this after. No, you want it going into the meeting, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's, that, yeah. I mean,
Well,
that
you
would
could
be
do it at
that would be a
4.
little tough on the second person.
You could do that at 4:30, and we could have the regular meeting at 5:30. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fine with me. I mean, if it's fine with everybody else.
It's just, the only thing with that is that we have some staff members that have to, drive a little bit, have family obligations, so.
Okay, so let me throw this at you, Dan, and this is on our agenda, but it's not in order. Item number 10 on our agenda is discussion of possible meeting time change during the summer months, although that's gonna be harder for you. I had talked with Mr. Coontz. We initially made the change to 4:30 to accommodate his work schedule. I understand, Christian, that's gonna be difficult for you as well, so I don't know if there is a good time. How are you doing Saturday at 1 o'clock?
Right.
Holly says, wake up.
Yeah.
I usually have to turn by then. So I will leave that up to you to work out with that committee on meeting time and date, and you might have, I haven't been shy about calling special meetings so far with this board. Not that I want to do that all the time, believe me, but it strikes me that this board has as much responsibility as each of our individual county commissions. And we all meet 2 times a month. We may need to consider that as a board of health. I know, everybody just loves me suggesting that we meet more often. I'm not a huge fan of either, but this is a big entity that we're in charge of.
That's gonna happen this summer anyway,
What's going to happen?
more meetings, because if we post a position. and we have
Right.
To do all things.
Correct.
related to that.
Correct.
Yeah, that's another thing.
That's,
Yeah.
that's June. I think. If you're talking, you're referring to review of the job description, whatnot, before we post the position for a health officer. Yeah. Yes.
So since we're still on the questions part, this is you were going over the memorandum letter, some targets, some goals.
As far as for the personnel finance.
Referring to the pages on this page that we were reading there, so I'm no longer on the numbered finance. I'm going back because he asked if there's anybody that has any questions regarding it.
Oh,
I
yes.
didn't want to move on without asking a question.
Go ahead. Oh, sure.
So I was reading along with you as you were going through the bullet points, and just the flood of questions came forward with me is, these are almost like these are all recommendations based on a group of people who have something they want to achieve. But these are all the words used: should do this, should. It's on every single bullet, but they're not really required, obviously, you know that.
Right.
But when you said you're going to get to the social determinants of health, and I'm really interested in knowing what initiatives that this chief strategist would do that's going to impact social determinants. What people do in the community. I'm just wondering if that's a direction that you plan on taking, or you're looking for recommendations. What is the intentions of reading those bullet points?
Well, it's just basically to inform the board that Public Health 3.0 is a strategy that, we currently have adopted. Health departments across the state have, really across the country. And it's just really looking at a broader, the community in a broader sense about what are the real barriers to good health, across the board. So it's just looking at it from a different angle. And and I know Susan will be going into detail about, some of the things that we already do. But that is kind of the focus of, or one of the focuses of public health, as we go into the future.
Okay. And then the last one, that last bullet point was referring to funding. That's obviously a legislative agenda item that someone would advocate for. And I'm just curious as to where that would go, because I'm county commissioner, I sit on the board, the health board at MAC. We do that kind of lobbying on behalf of counties, and I want to know what that really means so that I better understand at that level.
Sure. Well, I mean, in order to implement some of the programs and things that we're doing, we need, the funding to do that. We get grant funds, we get state and local dollars, some federal funds, but for instance, in our central local public health services funding, it's supposed to be a 50-50 cost share, but that has been never really been the case, so it's more like about a 30% cost share. So some of those things, just keeping those things on the dashboard of legislators and whatnot. And we do this working through our Michigan Association of Local Public Health, through our Environmental Health Association. Those are things that are always concerns, just determining, how we can maximize funding and what.
The local match drawdown has been required this year. The legislature did take that up, and that was hurting the counties and that local match for the Medicaid. So that's actually happening as of this.
Yeah. And there actually has been some good progress made, in the past few years with trying to bring up funding, but funding ebbs and flows, and it's a constant thing that just needs to be on the radar and just knowing what's going on.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Dan? I have a quick comment if there are no other questions. Go ahead.
I've got a couple.
Go ahead.
I think, I forgot which person you said is gonna be talking about the social.
Susan.
Yeah. They're kind of related, I guess, but I've been noticing going to some of our meetings. They talk about, here you're talking about the blending and braiding of funding, so, you know, we want more money for this. At the county commission level, we want more money for the Veterans Affairs. We want more money for the Commission on Aging. Michigan Department of Agriculture wants more money to fight avian flu. Everybody's got their hand up. And part of the problem with that is a lot of this funding comes from the federal government. And the federal government isn't earning that money, they're printing it. And then we wonder why we have inflation. Well, we're all kind of guilty. I mean, I'm a farmer, but we've got our hand out. Give us some more money. And then we wonder why we have inflation, and then you go back and you talk about your social determinants of health. Who does inflation hurt the worst? It's been said that inflation is the cruelest tax of all because it hurts the people on the bottom the most. Because they have nowhere to go to make more money to pay $4.50 a gallon for gas. They have nowhere to make extra dollars to buy groceries. And it hurts the poor people because the rich people have less discretionary spending. And when they have less discretionary spending, they can't hire me. I love to work for rich people because they pay me. And the problem is, if they have less discretionary money, they can't hire me anymore. So then I have less employment opportunities. So I may be underemployed. So I can't make as much as I could have, and my dollars don't go as far. So I guess my comment is, I think in government and in healthcare and throughout the board, across the country, we need to be cognizant that there's limited resources. And when we have inflation, it hurts the poor people the worst. That's just my comment.
No, I think, you know, and that is a valid, you know, you bring up some really good valid points. I guess I would say from our standpoint, you know, some of the things that we do, we can help those people that are impacted by inflation, especially poor people. Because, you know, maybe gas is so expensive, they can't make it to their WIC appointment or something of that nature. I mean, that's, you know, I guess, and I understand it's complex, you know, and some of those funds do trickle down from the federal government for sure. But I can tell you that we're here to try to help people, you know, and that's the main thing. Those other, you know, the big picture issues with inflation and things like that, I totally get that. And I agree with, you know, many of the points that you bring up in this problem. But we're just here to, you know, do what we can do to help the community, help the citizens. So
My second question was on the audit.
yes.
I think I asked it at a previous meeting. We've talked about this at the Antrim County level. Sometimes it's good to bring in another set of eyes, but sometimes it's good that we have a relationship with the firm that did do the audit already too. And we're not looking to create a whole bunch more work for you or for whoever else is in charge of setting all this up. So I'm curious where we are with, have we had any bites on the financial advice? What's the
Chief Financial Officer.
Chief Financial Officer.
Well, let's just say we're not getting, you know, a lot of applicants. We have recently received some that we're reviewing. See if, you know, we want to interview those folks. There's a couple of different, you know, things that we're looking at. You know, we've engaged the help of, for lack of a better term, headhunter that, you know, will help us find applicants. And there's no cost to do that unless you hire them, right? And then you have to pay a percentage, you know, if you hire them. But and we're also looking at other options, like, you know, you use for the time being until we can find someone. You know, do we use like a CPA firm that offers those type of services to just act as the CFO and
Kind of outsource it. for a time.
outsource it for the time being, right? So we're looking at all those options, which makes sense. I think you just have to, really review the options to really know what makes sense, the right way to go is. And what the expense would be, yeah, exactly. So, I wish that we, it's just a tough job market. I wish we had a lot of applicants we could just choose from and we could fill the position. And, in the last, I would say 3 or 4 years, it just seems like it's getting tougher and tougher where, when you used to put a job posting out, you were gonna hire someone. It just was a matter of interviewing and picking somebody. Now that's just not the case.
Question, I think my very first meeting was her last meeting, so I'm kind of trying to get caught up on the process you guys took for advertising.
Yeah.
For, where are you on the process part? Have you hired a company, or is it just a general advertisement? Do we have a professional firm, a headhunting firm? What, you know what I'm saying?
Right, so a professional, so at first, when we put out the job posting, it was on, the different job posting sites that we use for that type of position. And our human resources manager does that, Laura Kemp. And she's, got them, those were all put up, all out there in the right places. When we didn't, receive a whole lot of response from that, then that's when we talked about reached out and engaged this company, and I forget the name of the company, but it's an arm of Manpower. And basically they will, they seek out and send us applicants. And like I said, there's no fee. We're not paying for any of that unless you end up interviewing them, liking them, and hiring them. That's what you have to do. So we just kind of took the attitude of, well, let's see what they have, see what they send us, and we'll go from there.
A lot of government entities, you have to put things out for bid every so often. Is this one of those things? Or is it required to put the audit out for bid, or can we offer to do this firm for one more year? You know what I'm saying?
I think historically, it's been a 3-year contract.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
And Dan and I had a brief conversation about this. Because we don't have the CFO in place yet, it almost makes sense to take the 1-year extension so that we have somebody who's familiar with the books, who's familiar with the processes, and like you mentioned earlier, not adding a bunch of workload to the staff who are already short of department head. So I think, that will probably be a motion that we'll need to consider as a board and vote on, but I think it kind of makes sense, given kind of the state of flux that we're in right now, to maintain some consistency there.
Yeah, the idea is just we'll be in a much better position, to basically go out for the RFP in a year after the next audit.
Well,
And follow the process.
if you had a great candidate and hired them tomorrow,
Yeah,
there's an awful lot for that person to learn between now and the next budget cycle, right?
Yeah.
So,
the next budget cycle is basically that.
right,
So,
right. Yeah, we're getting into that. There you go, Charlie, we're gonna have more meetings.
Thank you.
Anything else for Dan? I have a quick comment, but anything else for Dan from the board? Thank you. Point number 5. Funding for public health should be enhanced and substantially modified. Take out public health and put any government entity in there.
I'm just partial.
I understand, that's your job. I would also state that the phrase blending and braiding of funding, to me, is bureaucratic doublespeak, and I don't trust it. And what I'm saying is that's where folks in the CDC throw out great terminology, and the folks who pay taxes yourself included, go, okay, wait a second, what exactly does that phrase mean? I don't trust that kind of bureaucratic double speak. I looked at that and my eyes kind of rolled. I'm just, and I'm not picking on you for that. I'm just saying that type of, when you're talking about funding, you're talking about tax dollars, and I don't care which government it comes from, state, federal, local, we all pay all of those taxes. So I always find those types of phrases to be suspicious. That's my only point.
I understand that.
Okay.
Can I say something to that? Is
Sure.
I think what that really means is trying to maximize your funding through multiple sources, and also maybe, sharing across the region, with, let's say, different health departments and whatnot to make things more efficient and things like that. So, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but I think the intent, and certainly it would be our intent, is with anything that we're trying to be the most efficient that we can. And in Northern Michigan, it's common, or has been common really in the last 10 years, to try to share resources because, and that's done through, other entities like, fire and other government entities, some law enforcement, I'd be more adept on that, but I think that's really what the intent is.
So based on what he said, I mean, we always work, the lower partners at community collaboration groups that we partner with, a lot of the lower, things are support styles. They mostly depend on local funding from their counties. And I would say block grants, I would believe, are probably the biggest one. So what I'm getting at is the wording he was referring to, it forces us to take a more of a direct approach at what type of funding, not just this Department of Health relies on, but what gets filtered down and how we influence that funneling down funding. And sometimes it is, I'll just use block grants as an example since I'm talking about it. It could be that. So maybe we need to really focus on, or maybe look at inventory of the type of funding that is going down in like a process and go that direction and use that kind of language because we know that those come and go too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
JAG grants, for justice and public, I mean, we're constantly saying reestablish that grant, so we got to keep on beating them up to make that grant be renewed every year.
Right.
So I see what you're trying to say without getting the paragraph form.
Right.
But at the same time, the braiding part I circled it. So, because I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I should have probably elaborated on that. So.
No problem. You have item number 4 then, Dan.
Yeah, just one more thing in item number 3 is just the one more thing for the Personnel Finance Committee would be, we're preparing for a mid-year budget amendment. We'll get going in the year, but, and really in June, it would be good for the personnel, to bring it to the Personnel Finance Committee and then the full board in July. Okay. Yeah. And that's really from a, transparency, just being prepared for our final budget amendment, which will be in September.
So are you, Dan, going to reach out to the Personnel and Finance Committee to arrange a meeting?
I think, I don't know if in your counties or if we use like Google or we have a mechanism through, I think, Microsoft Teams platform, do something like that, to try to get a good time for everybody. I think so that's what I'm kind of hearing. It's challenging for those committee members.
I believe you've got 3 of those committee members present. Mr. Valerio would be the 4th.
I'm driving from West Branch every Tuesday trying to get here on time.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's
Because I got another commitment there.
yeah. What's that?
Not on Tuesday?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be on like I said, a board day. It could be a different day or
Thursday.
And I can reach out, if there's unless there's a particular day or time that.
I wasn't looking for you to set a date right now. I'm just saying you'll
Yes,
coordinate that.
yes.
Okay, very good.
In the interest of time. tonight.
So for one more on number 4, the very last sentence, Board of Health is asked to approve the revised classification schedule as presented. So the only thing I'm concerned about is whether or not we're growing more personnel or we're rewarding, and we use rewarding because it is a reward for being here and being part of it and working by reclassifying and changing pay scales that keep people, that's not an issue. But if we're growing, I may have an issue because I want someone to prove it to me that we need that kind of growth. And I think that was the only thing I was worried about when I read this. Worker classifications, 1s and 2s, great. But is that ultimately what you're doing? Are you adding more personnel to do jobs that somebody used to do?
No, well, yeah, I mean, in one sense, we are because of grant funds that we received. In another case, I'm trying to, with the environmental health technician position that I put in there, is try to free up time. Well, number one, for that position, that person would be doing sampling, wastewater sampling as part of our surveillance program that we're already doing, that we're funded for. And then also for beach sampling in summer and various other environmental activities that would free up our sanitarians to, during the really busy summer season, to concentrate and focus on grants. So that would, for grants, permits. So that would be like campground and pool inspections that you could have environmental health tech do to free up those staff. Okay. The majority of that position is already funded. It's being done. We just don't have it in our classification schedule. So that was the reason going through and scoring that using the objective system that we use, that a human resources manager goes through, and making sure that it fits correctly in our compensation schedule. So, and then as far as the community health workers, all that.
Yeah, so historically, we've hired community health workers is what the work that they do as a public health tech 1 or a public health tech 2. So, but the work is really different, and it's been on our agenda for quite some time as a red task, is to be able to delineate those 2 positions. So we have the public health tech 1 comes in at the same classification as a community health worker 1. But the work is different. So the community health worker is the work like I talked about in my presentation last month with Community Connections. Their boots on the ground, just their task, their day-to-day is different, even though they score the same as a public health tech 1. But we felt that, you know, they deserve to have their own classification as a community health worker. They hold a special certification in that. So not adding, but just expanding that class to include them. So really just taking them out of the public health tech 1 and having their own line.
Are these union? I don't know. Are they union employees?
No.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So, just so that I can clarify, and I think because I had the same concern that you did, Mr. Marcus, we are not adding bodies. We are simply adding or simply changing classifications. Is that correct?
So we're hiring, you know, all the time.
Okay.
The CFO, when grants come through, you know, we may do that. But for this purpose, for the classification, this is just to get them on the classification because we have those community health workers working at our agency that deserve their own line outside of a public health tech 1.
We have 2 community health workers that are staff that are agency right now, and their staff is a public health tech 1 or public health tech 2 in that realm. But when we do their annual evaluations, we're looking at essential job functions. It really just doesn't fit. The work has evolved. When we first started that work, it fit in that bucket. But as the work has evolved, as public health 2.0 has evolved, we really felt, you know, in order to truly give them a evaluation that is adequate for the work that they're doing, we need to have, this is what their bucket of work is, and this is what their bucket of work is, even though they're similar. And so really breaking that out into 2 separate job descriptions, so everyone has their essential.
Yeah, side by side. It looks different.
So how does that impact the budget?
Pay scale's the same.
Thank you. That was the question that I wanted answered.
Yeah, the pay scale is the same, but I'm trying to read between the lines. I'm not trying to be aggressive, but I'm just. What I'm concerned about is if you have a department head, for example, who has a group of people working under them and they're reclassified, when they come back to, at the county, I'm relaying everything at county level, so I'm trying to see it both ways, but when you want to reclassify, we know you have a staff of 5 here and a staff of 5 here, both 2 different classifications. At what point are you required to say, because I don't know, have to come back to us and say, we need more staff on this here, and level, classification 1. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to, you said it's just the pay scale is the same, but you didn't answer the question of whether or not there's more people coming in, adding to the bodies that are already there. I'm looking for a growth of workforce or a reclassification of workforce. Obviously, they come and go.
Right.
I'm wondering, that's the question. Is it a growth in the workforce? Is it adding more Tech 2s and Tech 1s, or a reclassification, giving them different duties?
Yeah, really, we have 2 community health workers currently. They are called public health techs. And now we're gonna be called community health workers.
So that tech is gone, no longer exists?
Well, they're the same person.
Oh,
Correct.
okay,
So,
that's
yes,
what I'm getting
technically,
at.
there's
Yeah.
Now you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
You give a different title, but what happens to that title that used to be there? Is it gonna get added 2 more people?
Well, we
Is
have
it
all
growth?
sorts of other people that are those public health techs.
Oh, okay, so we're just, okay, now you understand where I was going with it, right? Once you leave a title, that title's still there, and I'm wondering if it's being filled by
Sure.
new people. Okay, thank you.
It's an addition to, I guess, could say.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you know, as the health department budget, you know, it changes, and that's why like bringing an amendment mid-year is typical. Because we get new grants that come in that we didn't anticipate, we didn't know about. You know, and then that may add staff, and that changes our budget. So, I mean, that does happen, and it changes, you know, sometimes. And I think that's really the reason for bringing that, you know, that budget forward.
My only concern was having a, I don't know what the health department uses for somebody to service client.
Yeah.
Is that the proper language?
Yes.
When you lose somebody with that's losing a task because you're adding different tasks, there's more likely that it fall through the cracks. And, you know, and that's what I'm concerned about. Really, it gets back down to the person we're serving. And if we're giving all these new duties and tasks, I just want to make sure that there doesn't, you know, the more people doing more a job that somebody else is doing is more concerning.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah.
I can understand that. So what the community health worker or the public health tech was initially hired to do is this community health worker work. So there isn't anything to backfill, they'll just continue to do what they were, but they'll be reclassified as what they really are. If that makes sense.
I'm learning. I'm just.
Okay.
No,
I ask a lot of
thanks,
questions.
I
I tell you.
appreciate it.
Actually, a good question.
Yeah.
So, Dean, you need, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I just need some clarification here. The point value. Can somebody explain that to me in 30 seconds or something?
It's really intense.
So, yeah, so it is a very, there's a whole questionnaire. So first of all, it starts out with let's say you're reclassing a position that's already exists. Or you're starting from like that public health tech position she was talking about, Holly was talking about. There's a questionnaire for the employee to fill out. Okay, if there is an existing employee, if it's not, then it's not relevant. But then there's a scoring system that the human resources and administrative staff go through that asks all kinds of questions. You know, basically, that gets down to like the skill set of the individual. You know, what is needed for the position, right? Whether a person is, and what kind of dangers they may encounter in the position. For instance, like let's say a nurse compared to an office clerk, you know, or a front office coordinator, where they're working with computer, paper, and basically doing office work versus a nurse that is, you know, drawing blood or giving injections. And obviously, there's a little bit more, a lot more to that. And it also looks at like the qualifications that are required, education, you know, just a lot of different factors. So it goes through this whole scoring matrix. And when you get to the end of it, then the job is scored.
It's an evidence-based, like, I don't know the name of it, if you know
I don't know,
specifically what
I don't know the
is,
name. I'm
but
probably not doing that great of
it's
a
very
job. of this.
objective.
We have a whole policy though we can share.
Yes.
The program.
So just,
Mhm.
certain points take more training and more knowledge, so lower point numbers are higher paying jobs, is that correct? Or is that not how this is scored?
Vice versa.
Higher point numbers as a higher salary.
Okay, okay, so I got it backwards. So the lower ones are lower paid.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
If you look at the job titles, like number 16 on the bottom of the second page is the deputy health officer, the chief financial. Those folks have the higher point schedule, and they have obviously the higher compensation.
Number 15 is the budget switch. There you go. There's the savings, where the other ones are.
Right. Okay. Anything, so you need a motion to approve this? Okay. So I will entertain a motion to approve the classification schedule as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Powers. Or second. Seconded by Ms. Roloff. Any further questions? Hearing none, Jennifer, can we have a roll call, please?
Howard.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
McGinnis.
Yep.
Hankins.
Yes.
Roloff.
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes.
Ruben.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Before we move on, I just want to give you a quick update on the lawsuits that actually our attorney sent me an email just with a quick update. So for the Emmett case, the plaintiff's attorney filed a motion to set aside the dismissal of the case for lack of progress. He filed a first amended complaint before the case was dismissed, but did not timely serve it, and the court entered the dismissal. The first amended complaint does not name any individual party plaintiffs, and thus one of our arguments is that there is no standing. Origin of this from Foster Smith is filing the answer to the plaintiff's motion on Thursday, and she will be appearing for the hearing, which I'll be appearing as well.
What's the date?
That is, I believe she didn't put that on there, but I believe it's May 10th, right? Which I think Charlie was going to.
Yeah, I thought I'd go. I mean, that's, well, how much fun can a person have? You know?
Right. In the Otsego case, the plaintiff has filed a claim of appeal in the Michigan Court of Appeals. The motion hearing transcript has been filed, and the past 56 days from the start date of that date to file a brief. Laura Genovich will be preparing and filing a brief on behalf of the health department after the plaintiff's brief is filed. So that's the update on those.
Thank you. Okay. Anything further for Dan?
One more thing. And then I'll let you move on.
Wow. All right, Dan, go ahead.
I just wanted, so, as my role moving from environmental health director to deputy health officer and now interim health officer, we did fill my environmental health director position internally with Jeremy Prude, who's sitting at the table here. He was one of our sanitarians. He's been with us for 6 years, I believe. And then prior to that, I was with Oakland County for 6 years. 6 years, yeah. So has worked in numerous environmental health programs and has a really good background and experience. And I'm working with him to bring him up to speed with all of the environmental health issues of the day here in our jurisdiction.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're already welcome. Just welcome to the new job. Did you change offices too?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I think it's a domino effect for everybody. Dan has to move, then I move, and then people are moving behind me.
So the technician now would work with you, under you?
Yes.
The sanitarians work
Under.
and the environmental health tech.
Yes, right.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah. And Susan has her presentation.
Okay, so Susan is the highlight for the month.
Yes, she is.
Don't drop the ball, Susan.
Try not to.
Everybody's watching.
I have a presentation going on up there.
Couldn't resist. I don't have any here
If you
to
guys want to move over.
These are the handles that go along with your presentation, Susan.
I believe so. Yeah, that's,
Ten minutes.
No pressure.
Yeah, it's ready. Okay, so I'm Susan Pulaski. I am the Community Health Supervisor. And I oversee the substance use prevention side of community health as well as health promotion side of community health. And today I'm going to talk about the substance use prevention side of it. So SAFE in Northern Michigan is the local coalition along with RISE. SAFE covers Antrim, Charlevoix, Emmett, and RISE covers Otsego counties. And I'm the project director of these coalitions. And I just want to explain really quickly, though, that community health is very different than the other divisions because we are all grant funded. We do not receive any of the county funds or state funds. We have state funds, but it's through block grant dollars and other grant funded ways. So we do have a lot of grants, and I'm going to show you some examples today, Scott, on how we create some of those. Because you asked for an example, I'm going to show you an example a little bit. So anyway, we write for grants pretty much all the time, and are always seeking other funding because, you know, when one grant ends, we have to have something ready to go. The Safe in Northern Michigan Coalition has been in existence since 2007, and it actually started with the Petoskey Harbor Springs Community Foundation. They saw that substance use was always the top of their issues when they interviewed kids and did surveys with kids. And so they actually were the first ones to put funding towards it. And then as soon as they did some community convenings and discussion about it, once they started having some discussion, then the Charlevoix Foundation got on board. And that's how it got started in 2007. It's currently funded through other grants. We have a national federal grant, Drug-Free Communities grant that funds a percentage of it. But we are always seeking more funding because the more funding we get, the more activities we can do, and it's more sustainable if we have multiple fundings versus just one funding, because it doesn't, again, it doesn't last. Grant fundings are usually pretty limited on how many years they're going to be around. So, all right, so I'm going to go through kind of like some of the activities. I actually, when Jen sent out your packets, she mailed you a sheet that has a bunch of, no, that's actually this PowerPoint, but she mailed you a listing of things that SAFE has been doing in the last couple of months, and then a few things that RISE has been doing in the last couple of months. So you should have gotten that in the mail. She told me she had to mail that because it was too big to mail you. But it shouldn't have been that. It should have been a list. Jen's not here right now. But I'll ask her about it because I did clarify. I'm like, I can print it. She's like, no, I mailed it to me individually. So anyway, it basically just gives a more depth look at all the different activities that SAFE and RISE are doing, because I'm just going to highlight a few in my 10 minutes. So youth activities, SAFE is very youth driven. We actually consider ourselves youth led, adult guided. We have about 80 youth that participate in SAFE, and we cover about 10 schools in the Antrim, Charlevoix, and Emmett that kids come and have meetings once a month. They decide on projects they want to work on. And again, the whole idea is substance abuse prevention. So it's primary prevention. We don't want kids to ever start using. And so these are ideas that they come up with that they want to, they feel like will work with their peers to educate them about substance use and, you know, to avoid it. So the promise stickers that you set there, that's a prom project. So those are going to go out to flower shops right before prom so that they'll go on the corsage boxes. The middle picture, the first middle picture there is what we call spirit nights. And we actually set up we picked one basketball game in each school, and they have a booth there. And this year they gave out bucket hats that had a message on that said "Be safe," and which is, you know, kids understand that to mean not use drugs because we have been around so long and they recognize our logo and they know those words as, you know, are you safe in the school? Be safe. So, and the other one is a picture of some videotaping that we did, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, some PSAs that we recently produced. And then the last one, that Socket to Drugs, we just did last Friday. And it was the first time we had done it. The kids had a ball with it. As a matter of fact, I was in meetings on Friday, and my kids from my different schools kept sending me pictures all day long of these crazy socks. So what they did was they promoted this Socket to Drugs Day, and kids wore crazy socks to school. And at midday or at the end of the day, each school had a voting on who had the craziest socks, and then they got more crazy socks as a prize. So we gave the 10 kids that had the best socks, or the craziest socks, more crazy socks to wear. It was just a fun event. Again, these are kids' ideas that kids have come up with that they want to try, that they can go work with their peers. We have done a lot of media over the years. If you ever want to see our PSAs, I'm going to try to show you one of these, maybe both of them if I have time. The kids have produced PSAs that they have written, and the topics change every year, but they're all available on our website, which is safeinNM.com. And they're focused on, we do a lot of data research. So we collect data and decide like what is the problem, and it can change every year. So this year our PSAs are on mental health, because the kids feel like that is the biggest issue right now with kids, that they're suffering greatly from the past 2 years. And the other one is on underage drinking. I can try to load one of them really quick. I'm hoping it's gonna work. If not, I'll show them at the end.
Is the same PSAs that are in the movie theaters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what? I don't know if it's gonna work, because I have my voice muted on my computer. I might have to show them to you afterwards, because Chris had me mute my computer, which is not, you're not gonna be able to hear them then. So I'm sure Chris can.
You
work
can
on it.
also email them to us and we can watch them.
Or you can go right to our website too, and if
Oh.
if we have time at the end, I will just show them to you from the website. That might actually work better. Okay, so anyway, the kids did produce PSAs. This year, because of COVID, we were not having the kids back in January, February, we're not making the kids all come together in big groups. We were having them done in individual schools, so our individual counties. So we have PSAs on mental health and for Antrim and Charlevoix, and that's, we have 3 different ones, and then the same thing with underage drinking. We have them for each county this year. In past years, we've had the kids all come together and make a couple PSAs all together. Just with COVID, it has not worked out as well this year. But they turned out really great, and they are being shown in movie theaters. We have digital media campaigns, and once they show the digital media campaign and they click on our ad, it'll take them to our website to be able to see the PSAs. They're also being shown on Connect TV, which is streaming TV instead of like 7 and 4 or 9 and 10, because our youth would tell us that kids don't actually watch TV like that anymore. They stream stuff. So, and again, this is youth led, so we listen to the youth. And if the youth tell us, hey, kids aren't watching 9 and 10 anymore, then we listen to them. We quit showing stuff on 9 and 10 or whatever. We show them where they're watching it. So Connect TV is where it's being seen, and so that's where we put our ads and our funding. Pardon me?
From the video game.
So digital ads too can pop up on different games. So that's how, like when we were doing digital ads, which I don't have time to explain that today because it would take forever. But when kids are playing video games, we do digital ads that pop up, and they'll see our ads on the video, and if they tap on it, they'll take them to our PSAs. So. We have the Adult Coalition. We do have adults on the coalition as well. We have projects that we work on along with the youth. The middle one I'll talk about briefly today is the trailer. Some of you may have seen the trailer. It's basically set up like a mock teen bedroom. And so when a parent enters, and this is not meant for youth to go into, it's just meant for parents to go into, it looks like a bedroom. And there's all kinds of paraphernalia and different kinds of drugs within the, not true drugs, but the different paraphernalia within the trailer, so parents can learn about it. They can learn about the different drug trends. You know, when vaping was really getting popular, most parents didn't even know what a vape pen looked like, or you know, the little, it looks like some of them look like a USB. Nobody knew what they looked like. And so it was a great way for us to show the parents and explain to parents. And so we usually work with a police officer. We said we have a coalition member that goes with the trailer events and a police officer. And we host those events in the community quite regularly. And this spring we have a huge agenda or sign up for different days that will be at different places. But that's one of the projects that the adults do. The Talk Sooner signs are out right now, the month of April, this first part of May. We've been encouraging parents to talk sooner to their kids about substances, and that's a great website for parents to go and get information about, how to talk to their kids at different ages. Some other events that we've done with the kids, just again, in the last couple of months, we had some downhill skiing here at Mount Saba. We had ice skating at the Petoskey Ice Arena. We had a movie night at the Charlevoix Cinema. So we're always trying to offer events that the kids can do that are promoting alcohol and drug-free events. The RISE Coalition is a newer coalition that was established in 2018. And they're working to get more youth involved. They don't have as many youth involved as SAFE, but they're working to get more youth involved and do more activities. And they have a new project coordinator this year, Ellen Templeton, and she's been doing a great job of building this coalition. And Rob, we're here tonight to tell you more about it because he participates on that, and they're just having a really phenomenal year. One of the really cool projects they have going on right now is this street art workshop. So they got us a mini grant to be able to offer these art classes, and kids signed up to take the art classes over 10 weeks. And if the top picture you see up there is their skate park in Otsego County, that's right by the sports complex. And as you can see, it's tagged and has a lot of graffiti. And the kids that are in this art class will all be making a panel, and that bottom picture is their vision of what they'd like the skate park to look like. But they are working with artists on a weekly basis to learn different art, and then they will all get to create this panel to then will be in, I think it's the middle of June, that the art classes will be over, and they will install these panels at the skate park along with security cameras. I mean, it's really going to be an awesome project that they're working on to improve that skate park. They've also done some fun events. They had some downhill skiing at Treetops, as well as skating at the sports complex. That was in the last couple months. And they do lock boxes that they give out at the pharmacy. I think it's Friday in Otsego County, where people can, if they have controlled substances or if they need to lock up recreational marijuana, they can get a lock box from that pharmacy and keep that stuff secured so you don't get a hold of it. They also have a campaign running where they have some theater ads running. And they also just made some new PSAs too, which are there, but I probably won't be able to show you because I don't have any volume. But again, they can also be found on the RISE website, which is rise.sego.com. And the PSA that they just completed is on vaping. So that's the end of them now. Okay, again, that's a very small sample of the activities that we do with that sheet, but John's back. John, no one seems to remember getting your mailed sheet.
Oh, the PowerPoint should have been.
Oh, it wasn't the PowerPoint, so maybe that's what maybe you and I were talking to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can email it out.
Okay,
Maybe
all
there's
right.
something. Sorry.
It was actually more detailed on the different activities that we've got going on, and it was only over the last couple of months. We also have an action plan for the whole year. Every year we create a new action plan, and we could share that with you as well. And then at the end of the year, we also do an annual report, which and you should send to the board and review.
The Johannesburg awarded the Miss Kennedy, who was awarded it. Do you guys see a good potential and more participation on kids who are rewarded because they could use that to help them get college entrances and stuff like that, and the resumes, and they're personally rewarded? Not all schools have that college partnerships like the other does.
Right. So, when kids participate on these coalitions, we keep track of their hours, and we give them a certificate at the end. So when they're, filling out college scholarships, they can include that on there, that they were a participant on there, that they put this many hours in. A lot of college, scholarships want to see a personal resume, and so they can include that information on there. So that would be a perk of being on the coalition. I think there's a lot of different reasons why kids choose to participate in the coalition, where usually they have some passion.
Money motivates everybody.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, but that is we do give them, we keep track of all of their hours and give them, certificates at the end so they can keep track of it. And a lot of the youth that, join and they're freshman or sophomore year are with us until they're seniors and graduate out. So usually they're, 2 or 3 or 4 years with us. So it's really neat. Anyway, As I mentioned earlier, all of these projects are grant funded. We're always seeking more funding. And one of the things that we wanted to discuss with you today, which you may or may not be aware of, is the opioid settlement funding that is currently going to the counties, or maybe has already gotten there. We heard that maybe in April it was going, but maybe in May, that the counties would be receiving funding for the opioid settlement money. And it's not money that can just be dropped into a general account. It's very specific on what it needs to be used for, like prevention and treatment or Medicaid treatments or assisted treatment. So we are hoping that that when, and maybe the ask really is that can we, come and have a conversation with your county boards, or you could take it back to the county boards, but we really would like to see some of that funding go towards prevention, so we can continue to do projects that will help to reduce substance use in our communities.
I could add to that too. So the opioid settlement funding, if you're not familiar with that, so that was a settlement that is coming and it's going to be spread over 18 years. So, small amounts each year, but we would love it. Like that.
Thank you, Louise. Jared, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, are they doing anything with getting fathers to be more involved? Because I've been reading about if there's an active dad, that's involved in his kids' lives and cares about them, they're a lot less likely to get on drugs in the first place. And I was just wondering if there's there's a pretty strong correlation between homes where a dad is doing activities with his kids and cares about them, versus those who, some of them don't even know who their dad is, and it seems
I've
like
seen some media campaigns, promoting dads being involved. I think, when we're doing activities, we're promoting protective factors. And that's another term for like what you're talking about. It would be a protective factor that the dad was involved in doing activities. And so we're always doing activities that would increase protective factors.
I can add to that. In family health, we really focus on the younger group versus they're kind of more in the older one. And a lot of our nurses, social workers that are out there working with families in homes, parent-child interaction on both the mother and the father is definitely a large emphasis of the work that we do.
Scott, I wanted to share with you the braided fund idea. So the media campaign that we currently have running on mental health, SAFE only had so much money to put towards that. And so we were actually able to use a couple other grants that were not the money of SAFE. And they also needed to do some mental health PSAs. They didn't have the youth to produce the PSAs. We were working with youth to produce the PSAs, but they had the funding to put towards a media campaign. So we were able to combine those two fundings to offer that media campaign more broadly. So we worked together to produce the PSAs and then to have the media go further because we created those funding.
I may have missed who was the they that had the funding.
So it was a smaller grant and actually was through the health centers. I don't know the actual titles of each grant, but
Yeah, the health centers, we actually had, wasn't EYT involved in that?
EYT was in that too. Yeah.
There was actually a couple different grants that we had funding for to do campaigns, media campaigns for the
Very good. Thank you. I actually would love to see the title of dads in some sort of title of activity. I mean, be called out. It'd be nice.
There is going to be a Fatherhood Summit coming up. It's I received in my email. I'm not sure where it takes place, but it's in May 17th. And I can send that out.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, but for us to be collectively involved into a program that's titled that, focusing on it, not just to be included, but focused on it. I want to see what happens.
Thank you. Anything further for Susan? She's the highlighted department head this month. Anything further from the board? Thank you very much. Okay. We have a number of our department heads present, and we have their written reports. Do any members of the board have any specific questions for any of the department heads regarding their written reports? Sir.
I don't know where my note is, so I'm gonna have to fish around, but I just noticed, I think Josh, but it could be somebody else. There was a reference to public transit, and of course, there's the issue of rising fuel costs. And I noticed in one of these reports, which I didn't mark, a reference to, oh, I know where it was, Amanda. It looks to me like some of your folks are doing, where's Amanda? Oh, there's Amanda, doing outreach, so you're doing, you're going to people who can't afford to get to someplace. Rising fuel prices must have an impact on both your client's ability to get somewhere and your ability to fund your staff to get to homes. Is that true?
Yeah, so our staff are reimbursed for any mileage, because of the federal mileage reimbursement rate, which is not keeping up with the rise of gas right now. So it'll be interesting to see what that changes over and all of that. But yeah, that's one of the ways that we break down those barriers for those individuals that may be experiencing them. They can still get those services because we'll go out to them, but it definitely impacts a budget depending on the amount that federal reimbursement rate is and the number of mileage that we have to do. As an agency in regards to mileage, just our own employees, we've, looked at the cost analysis of fleet vehicles versus staff driving their own, and that's always something that, they've evaluated depending on needs and all of that, but.
Every county but ours has a really good transit system, especially Charlotte. And I just don't know enough about Otsego and Antrim to say, but it's clear it's an issue of importance to public health, the issue of transit.
Yeah, transit is definitely it is by far one of our biggest barriers for any of the clients that we're working with, and being able to get to the services, not only the services at the health department and that's work that, but also the services, their primary care provider, their OBGYN, if they need to get there to the dentist office, all of that. So a lot of the work that even like our community health workers do is working on what are the resources out there to help them through Medicaid health plans. If we have different grants, Antrim County IT is another great one, that in our breast and cervical cancer program they provide us funding so that we can give CAS cards to individuals so they can go get their mammogram as an example. So really just trying to, where are the barriers and how in public health can we break down those barriers and try to squish that gap a little bit further from the vulnerable population to those that don't need as much assistance.
Thank you.
Who is in charge of the mobile lab? You are? Okay,
Yes.
so 2 months ago, I want to say it was in March, I saw the mobile lab parked at the Chris station on the north side of town. I left the county building and they were there. And I thought, well, I'm gonna go be nosy. And as I approached, they'll put their masks on. They said, "You need to be tested." And I said, "No, this is who I am and I'm just being nosy." What a great group of folks. They spent about 20 minutes showing me the new mobile lab. We talked about Dan Thorell and no. No, really.
Joe was there, so I'm sure.
Yeah, no, great staff, very nice piece of equipment, and I just wanted to give them attaboys. That was, they were very approachable and very friendly, and they wanted to keep sticking me in the arm, and I said, "Get away."
I think they wanted to.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, they started over here and it came out over here, but there was not a lot of resistance. You don't need to comment. All right.
I got one more question.
Mr. Rubin.
For Dr. Myerson. I've been getting some questions from constituents about all-cause mortality, and just wondering if the health department looks at those numbers, if we have any numbers for 4 counties in our jurisdiction, or if that's not something we're looking at, just any kind of answer.
Yeah, we look at those statistics, but we don't, we get the vital statistics from the state. And so when we look at all-cause mortality, I usually look, I'm going either to the state vital statistics or then, the national statistics as they come up. So, and there's a big lag there. It takes a while for those. So I think right now when you're looking at it, like 2020 probably, when you look at the most recent statistics. So, yeah, and I don't know what specific question you might have about that.
Well, that basically answered my question, because if we're 2 years out, it's not gonna give us any useful data on COVID, so.
I think, when they look at deaths being reported and you hear those are when we get those deaths, when we report out deaths from COVID, those are coming, they are, reported through, and then, those do get looked at locally to show that that person resided, is in our county, someone was a resident of our county, and COVID was listed as a cause or contributing factor to that.
Thank you.
And so if we're able to get that information so fast, how come we can't get others that fast? Like by asking.
We just, I guess I'm not, I guess I don't understand.
I mean, obviously, there's multiple reasons for that, but if we chose some of the ones that we know are high factors, heart disease and stuff like that.
When someone dies at home or in the hospital, that death certificate is filled out and filed at the state level.
Sure.
So, and then it takes a while for that to all get put into that database. So
that's why numbers are skewed.
I have the same access to that as you do. It's public information.
So.
But what he's asking is, we've got COVID data pretty up to date, but our all-cause mortality data is 2 years old. So that's kind of, I think that's what you're.
I think when you look at, I'm just saying that's, the COVID deaths were the, for a while, the things we were being notified of specifically, because there was a dashboard and it was being counted. We were expecting to have a local dashboard. We don't have a local dashboard where every month we're getting reports of how many people died, this, that, or the other. But, I think that data is available and it's out there. And even when you look at mortality, for instance, even for 2020, we already, we have that data that shows that there were a lot of excess deaths that year. You can debate about what they died from and if it was really this or really that, but it's hard to debate whether they were dead or not dead. And it was a very deadly year. And that we have that data in 2021 is going to be worse than 2020, but I can't easily readily get at that, but that's something we're all going to see coming out in the next few months as that data is calculated.
Do we have the ability to contact, we have 2 major hospitals in our region, right?
Yeah.
Is there any way we can contact, because all we work for our region. I don't really, honestly don't care what Detroit's doing. I want to worry about my region, so that's what we're funded through. Why can't we get data from our local hospitals based on their reporting, not who died at home? Because that's helpful too, right?
Well, I guess on what sort of data we contact the hospitals?
What would they provide? They may not. And 2, why not?
On all cause mortality?
Yeah.
Because it's never been done. When someone dies, a death certificate has to be filled out. That's a legal thing, and it gets filed to the state.
But the COVID circumvented the death certificate thing. That's my point. You're talking about a length of time, and you're using that as a reason why we're not getting information. But let's forget about that for a minute. Why can't we call the hospitals? You know what I mean?
I think I understand what you're saying, but I think, yeah.
What you're trying, I'm not sure what your point is.
Well, I'm always curious about, you're getting us, we're coming to it next. Okay, we're talking about community factors of health. I'm always curious, no matter how many people die in our jails or whether they die in hospitals or what. I'm curious about what the cause is, because that helps us factor in. I mean, I owned a business for 18 years, and everybody on food stamps never bought milk. They bought Sara Lee candy bars, or Sara Lee cakes. They didn't buy good food, they bought junk.
So Christian, that's a great point. Like, that's not going to be listed on the death certificate, right? It's going to say they died of heart attack. It's not going to be, and obesity might be listed as a contributing factor, but eating cheap food because that's all I can afford, or that's what I chose to buy.
You get free money, you get all the money you want to buy a steak or a cake.
Right, so
there's a difference.
So the issue is when you're looking at, that's a great point, is we know the leading causes of death are heart disease, cancer, and now COVID, unfortunately, for 2020 and 2021 is number 3. So, which is unusual. We've never had an infectious disease is the 3rd leading cause of death since, for decades now. But it's always heart disease, cancer. But what causes that? So you made a great point. You said you went upstream, and that's exactly what his report was about, and the social determinants of health are all about is why do people have heart attacks? Why do they get cancer? What can you do to prevent it? And it's really easy to just tell people, that's why I experiment, it's easy to just tell people, we'll eat better and exercise more, don't smoke. But we know there's a lot of factors that contribute to whether people can do that and lead healthy lifestyles. So that's where these socioeconomic factors come into play. And in another brochure I put out, we know now that unfortunately a lot of what the doctors do and what we do as far as trying to have protective, preventive measures going are only half of what leads to health outcomes. And what's more important really in people's health is their socioeconomic factors and the physical environment they live in. And that's what drives a lot of our health that you all pay for. We all pay for it, right? I mean, if someone comes into the hospital with a heart attack, we don't ask for a credit card. We take care of them and we do what we need to do to save their life. So we're all paying for it. So how can we use those dollars in the most cost-effective way? And we have to look at all these factors that affect health. That is, those upstream factors are more important in many ways than the care they get and their access to doctors and hospitals. Does that make sense?
It does, but I totally disagree based on my life experiences at this pyramid. I'll give you a perfect example. Well, I work 2 jobs. I sit in my car a lot, driving 150, 200 miles every day. I eat junk because I don't have time to stop and eat. I eat an apple in the morning, whatever, but throughout the day, you're obviously going to grab a pizza at a store, wherever you're going to go. So my 2 jobs, my lifestyle, my work, that we get to my point, is creates less time. My lifestyle, I'm not at home, eating dinner at right times. Everything's all out of whack. Meanwhile, and this is through my own experience of 18 years of watching people, those that don't work and don't have 2 jobs and don't sit in a car and drive all day long, they're at home, they're fishing, they're playing games, they're not dying of heart attacks from stress. They get their electric bills paid for, they get their roofs replaced, they get their food things, they get childcare, they get everything free, but they choose to buy junk. And yet it's the community they live in, it's our fault that they do this. Why don't we take away those abilities to buy junk and say, you can't buy junk? I know the Grocery Association will throw a fit because they're making money off of it. But let's be real. I mean, this is the total opposite. The people who are educated, they're working hard, they're working every day. The ones that are not educated, they got the lifestyle that we all want because they're doing everything they want to do. Well, we're working our butts off to try to get somewhere.
Well,
So,
I think it's
right, I think
important
that's-
to not say that they aren't working though, because like Jairus talked about earlier, there's also people that are out there working just as many hours or 2 or 3 jobs, but they're low paying jobs because that's where they are. And so they also don't have the time that you have, but they also can't afford things because they're the working poor, because that is a really important
That is a
component
true
to
group.
consider in our
You
community.
can look at socioeconomic levels. You can look at, how much, what your income is, your basic levels of income. You can look at your educational levels. And the more that you have, the healthier you are. It's very predictable. Your zip code can in many ways predict your overall health versus many other factors. Even if you have the best doctor in the world next door. So that's all this paragraph is trying to say, is that people who struggle with poverty, people with lower educational levels, people who have trouble getting safe housing, people and those people, for whatever many different factors within those socioeconomic milieu that they live in, struggle to maintain good health. And how can we help address those issues versus just telling them to eat better and don't smoke? It can help, and we should continue to counsel people, but you can't move the needle very well if you don't address those underlying issues. So how do we empower them to have a job that they are, that provides them worth as far as economic worth, self-worth, emotional worth? And all of those factors are important. So I think really.
I kind of agree with you. I'm just
we're saying the
vocalizing
same thing.
a frustration that people, and I'm the typical guy, right?
Right.
Feel like we're constantly ignored because we don't qualify, but yet we're just as unhealthy based on our working lifestyle as the targeted audience that does get the help. I
Well,
think
we
that's where I'm
want-
going with
yeah,
it.
Well, but that's part of what we do is we want to help you that. We want, how can we help you, even though you're driving around all the place, how can we help you eat better? How can we help you get some exercise? How can we design our environments and our communities so that it is easier for you to make that choice that will
Sure,
help.
if you qualify.
No, it doesn't have to qualify.
Okay, that's why I want to make sure you
Like,
see
we have
that.
bike trails out here. Anyone can use our sidewalks or our bike trails to take a stroll with the kid. You can be
Anyone,
jobless.
but not me, I
or-
work two jobs.
Well, how can we help address that? That's important. I'd like you to have some.
Unlike,
time
like
to
she
read
said,
that.
the lower income people, they work two jobs, well, so do I. So, okay.
Don't disagree on that one.
Okay. Anything further for our directors? Thank you. Item number 9, fund balance policy amendment. Rally remains there. Yes.
Can we just use the yellow highlighted paragraph as a motion, Dan?
I actually have a motion.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Never mind.
So, and I think all the members of the board are familiar with why we're gonna be making this amendment. So, I move that the health department's minimum fund balance, currently set at 2 months of regular operating expenditures, be adjusted to 1.85 months of actual operating expenditures. And that this adjustment be in effect for the fiscal years ending September 30th, 2022 and September 30th, 2023, unless otherwise recommended by the health department's chief financial officer or accounting department. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. McGinnis.
And that's pretty close to this yellow highlighted paragraph, right? I
Yes.
mean, I was trying to read that.
Right, I appreciate that. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
One thing, we don't have a chief financial officer right now, correct?
That's why it says chief financial officer or the accounting department. That was in my motion.
Yeah. That's, and I'm not necessarily opposed to that, I'm just stating that that's fairly broad. And if I was in the accounting department, I would like to know if that's my thing that I should be looking at. I mean, you just throw it at a department. Okay, who's keeping an eye on this? You know what I mean?
Sure. We are, and Dan is, and any other alterations to our to this policy would need to come before this board.
And that is stated in the yellow at the very end that, will be approved by the board. Any deviations from that, so.
Thank you.
Jairus, I sincerely hope we have a CFO.
Yeah, I do too.
Fiscal year 23.
I'd like us to have one by the end of June. But, okay, any further discussion from the board? And moved and seconded, I hear no further discussion, can we have a roll call, please, Jeff?
Powers, yes,
McGinnis,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Ruben.
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you. Item number 10 on your agenda is discussion of possible meeting time change during the summer months. I did speak with Matt Coops briefly, and he said that he doesn't have a problem with July or August having daytime meetings, but that probably creates a problem for you, Christian, I'm not sure.
Would you guys call daytime meetings in the past?
In the past, we had our meetings at 10 o'clock. Understood. So I think, given that, we probably shouldn't amend our meeting times and dates because we want to have as many members present as possible. So is there any further discussion from the board on that? Hearing none, we're going to move on to committee reports. Personnel and Finance Committee, accounts payable.
I make a motion that the finance committee met and recommends approval of the April bills in the amount of $675,913.71. And the April employee expenses of $11,376. Oops, wait a minute, 11,376,812. That's too many digits.
There's a problem there somewhere.
Yeah, either that or we're gonna have different, not base 10. Since it's 11. Unless the comma is in the wrong spot.
I hope not.
That's what I was hoping not.
Hold
to.
on, I'm sorry about that.
All right, well, the April employee expenses to be determined by staff.
Should be 113.
Yeah, see, it's got 3768, so it's got too many digits there. That's the best I can come up with as a motion.
I think Jennifer's looking for.
I'm looking for it.
employee
Mine was
expense
the
amounts.
next report.
Okay.
That-
Is Andrea a panelist?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes. it is a panelist.
I got it right here, I just got it. Got your calculator out.
Make sure you're right, because this is a motion that we're spending on.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, we need to-
Is Andrea a panelist?
It looks like she's on there. So
Your
she's a
Zoom?
supervisor.
Andrea, can you hear us?
We might have to make her. I just texted her.
Okay, it's 11,678.12. So I just, there was a 3 added in there by mistake.
11,
11,000, I'm sorry, 678.12, so.
okay, so 11, although it said 3768, it's 678, right?
Yep, 12.
All right, so I'll finish my motion. The April employee expenses of $11,678.12.
I'll second that motion.
It looks like Andrea just unmuted.
Yeah, my apologies. I hope you can hear me now. I was trying to find the unmute button to answer your question, but it sounds like Jen found the information you needed.
Is the correct amount for April employee expenses $11,678.12?
Yes.
Thank you. You can mute this again.
Sorry about that.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion from the board? Roll call, please.
Rubin,
Yes.
Merkin,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes.
Lincoln,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yep.
Howard.
Yes.
Program and Evaluation Committee.
Mr. Rubin, we already discussed the rules, and that's what we discussed in our meeting, so.
Correct. And we're meeting again later this month. I want to say the 17th. Is that correct?
I don't know, Jennifer set it out.
I did. I don't know.
It may not be the 17th, or it might be the 16th, but I know that
It's
we're
sometime in the
meeting
middle of the month.
again.
It's the 16th, Monday.
16th. Monday the 16th. Okay. Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, I already read the rules for public comment. Is there any members of the public that would like to speak and address the board? Ms. Colbina, correct?
Hi.
Did I get it right?
That's correct, you did.
Outstanding.
I live in Tofty, and this is my podium.
That's your podium.
Yes.
Thank you.
I've attended these meetings for 9 months, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself, many of my friends, and our children. Although we celebrate her departure, the resignation of Lisa Peacock has not changed the fact that we will remain vigilant as to the actions of this board and the health department. An open and free society demands communication between our elected officials and their constituents. The Epic Times recently discussed how medical professionals in Michigan were harassed and intimidated these past 2 years by the CDC, the Department of Health and Human Services, and our local health departments. As the wife of a practicing physician and a friend to many health professionals, I am a witness to these threatening professional licenses and their voices being silenced. When they asserted their rights to use the knowledge they learned after years of sacrifice and dedicated study, and they tried to stand by their oaths they swore to first do no harm, they were threatened by the MDHHS if they did not comply. Many quit or were fired for refusing a COVID vaccine that does not even prevent the spread of COVID. As patients, we deserve and demand complete autonomy on the part of our medical care providers. Medical decisions should never be, or should always be, between ourselves and our doctors, not dictated to us by bureaucrats. At the last meeting of this board, the issue of this health department expanding mental health treatment was discussed. While those who are not able to afford treatment should never be refused, please stop saying that these services are free. Nothing is free. Everything this department does is taxpayer funded. Even grants originate from taxpayer dollars. We the people pay these taxes. We the people fund this health department. Speaking of money, it came to our attention that the severance package paid to former health department officer Lisa Peacock was a whopping $249,900. The news review of Petoskey Review stated that this board and Ms. Peacock are under a gag order not to speak negatively of each other. We're fully aware of the reasons why. However, that rule does not apply to me or my fellow citizens. We're very unhappy that this woman was paid to leave. By the way, she did not surrender, she quit. That severance pay came out of our tax dollars. Not even her leaving was free. Bottom line, please respect our bottom lines. Be careful with our money. This is our money. It's our hard work that pays for the tax dollars that supports all of these programs that we see expanding into the schools.
That's 3 minutes back.
And that's all I have for you today. So thank you. I appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to address the board? Hearing none, thank you. Commissioners' updates. Let's go right down the list. Ms. Powers, do you have anything?
No.
Ms. Roloff?
No.
Mr. McKinnis?
You.
Mr. Marcus? Mr. Rubin?
Yeah, the opioid settlement money has been talked about in our county. There's a couple of the companies that have settled, and there's a couple that litigation is still ongoing. We do have a bit of a challenge in Antrim County because we have a number of people that do not have a favorable view of the health department right now. So I think that some of this money can be used for mental health, but we may have to let things die down a little while before we move in that direction.
Thank you. Real briefly, I received a phone call and also a follow-up email from Dr. Barbara Connolly, who is the chair of the Benzie-Leelanau District Health Department Board of Health, that contracts with us for our health officer and for our medical director. They would like to have a joint board meeting at some point between this Board of Health and their Board of Health. They would like to have input into the hiring of the new medical director or not, sorry, Josh, I misspoke there. But the beginning of the no, I'm kidding. Into our new full-time health officer. That's what I meant to say. So I may ask you to attend a joint meeting. It's not been determined when yet, but I know they would like to have some input into the hiring process. I have my own thoughts on that, and we can go into that at a later time when we have that joint meeting. But I just want to make the board aware that they have reached out and made that request. Mr. Marcus.
Well, I don't want to wait till there's a joint meeting. I want to discuss whether we should, there's a value to our body to have a joint meeting. What's the value to it to us? They contract separately. What's the value to us to have a meeting? I don't think there's a value to us to have a meeting.
I understand your position. I can't say that I am different in opinion.
Well, you don't have to take the meeting.
Well, we don't have to. I'm simply passing out to the board that the board, if this board says that you don't want to pursue a joint meeting with them, that's fine with me as well.
Can I say something?
Sir.
Yes, so that board went through a planning process of strategic plan. It's just after, in light of, all the events that have happened, just to determine what they want to do. I was there, okay, because I am going to be at the time I was going to be the health officer there too. So I think part of that was that they recognize the value of the agreement that they have with HDNW to share health department, or to share a health officer. And just basically wanted to open the lines of communication to discuss that. Yes, they do want some input because they are, paying part of the salary. They want some input in who's hiring. I think that's essentially what they're looking for. Which my personal opinion, I think is reasonable. I mean, we may disagree, but that's essentially why they're reaching out.
I think they also wanted to open up the lines of communication.
Yes, yeah.
She wanted
I
to talk.
Sure. Let me just briefly read the email. Hello, Scott. As we discussed by phone, the Benzie-Wheelock District Board of Health is doing some strategic planning. We do appreciate many of the benefits of contracting with HDNW for our health officer and medical officer. On review of recent events, it was evident to us that we needed to have a closer relationship with the board of HDNW. We would welcome a chance for members of our board to meet with the Board of Health for HDNW in the near future. We do feel that we would like to be a closer participant in the hiring of a health officer that would serve both of our health departments, and I think a closer relationship with the boards would be a great first step in that process. Can I arrange a meeting with the two boards? We may need to poll the members for a good day and time. Thanks much, Barbara Conley, MD. So, I'm not going to discuss that further right now. I'm just letting the board know that that's out there. You may see that appear as an agenda item for discussion.
That's what I was just gonna recommend.
Yeah.
Put it on the agenda for discussion, for a special meeting.
Okay. If there is nothing further, I will entertain some move to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. McInnes. Thank you, Mr. Marcus. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're done. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
You said that